The air inside the auction hall was heavy, thick with smoke from burning lamps. Rows of cages lined the long corridor, each one filled with frightened shapes. Alien traders walked between them, their sharp voices cutting through the silence as they shouted prices and mocked the weak. Among the cages, one stood apart. In it sat a young alien girl, small, fragile, her silver eyes staring at the ground. Her skin carried faint patterns that seemed to glow whenever the torchlight touched them. But no one cared. The traders had already called her useless. They said she was too weak to work, too strange to sell. Nobody wanted her. The crowd roared as another cage opened. A large beast with tusks was dragged out. Its price was high, and buyers raised their hands quickly. Coins changed hands, deals were made. The hall buzzed with greed and excitement. Yet the girl's cage stayed closed. Her name was not even spoken. At the far end of the hall, a man stood, quietly. He was not like the others. His clothes were plain, worn by travel. His eyes sharp but tired. He was human, and he had come here only to pass through. He told himself he would not get involved. This place was not his concern. But then, his gaze fell on the girl. She lifted her head just once, just enough for their eyes to meet, and in that moment something changed inside him. The noise of the auction faded. The laughter of the traders became distant. All he could see was the hopelessness in her eyes, a quiet plea, silent yet louder than the cries of the other prisoners. The trader slammed a stick against her cage. "This one?" he shouted with a cruel laugh. "No one wants her. She eats more than she works. She's useless." The crowd jeered, shaking their heads. Some even threw scraps of food at her, mocking her weakness. The girl pulled her knees close and lowered her head again. She knew she would not be chosen. She knew she would rot in that cage until her light went out, but the man did not look away. His hand clenched at his side. He tried to tell himself to walk on, to leave before trouble found him, yet his feet would not move. Something deeper held him there. The auctioneer's voice rang out again, loud and sharp. "Final chance, does anyone give a coin for this one? Anyone?" The hall grew silent, waiting for the laughter to return, and then it happened. The human raised his hand. A wave of shock swept through the crowd. Heads turned, voices muttered. Did he just buy her? One whispered, "Why would anyone waste money on that thing?" Another spat. Even the auctioneer froze for a moment, then let out a mocking laugh. "You, human, you want this broken one? She will not survive a week." The man's voice was calm but firm. "I'll take her." Coins clinked as he tossed them forward. The trader snatched them greedily, shaking his head at the foolishness of the deal. The cage creaked as it opened for the first time in months. The girl did not move. She thought it was another trick. The human knelt slightly, reaching out his hand. His voice was softer than any she had heard in years. "Come with me." Her silver eyes widened. She looked around, waiting for the laughter, waiting for the strike of a whip. But none came. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. The crowd burst into noise. Some shouted, some laughed, some even spat at the ground, calling him a fool. But he ignored them all. He helped her step out of the cage. Her legs weak from too much time in darkness, she stumbled, but he caught her, steady and firm. They walked together toward the exit, the jeers following them. The girl's hand clung to his sleeve, her heart racing with fear and disbelief. For the first time in her life, someone had chosen her, not as property, not as a mistake, but as a choice. Yet as they left the hall, the man felt something else. Eyes watching them, cold and sharp. Not all were laughing. Some were whispering, following with their gaze. It was not just mockery, it was interest, dangerous and quiet. The auction was over, but the real story had just begun. The market outside the auction hall was loud and filled with the smell of smoke and strange spices. Traders shouted prices, buyers bargained. Creatures in chains stumbled past, but among the noise, one scene made everyone turn their heads. A human walking with a fragile alien girl clinging to his sleeve. Some laughed openly. "He wasted his money," one trader spat. "That thing will die before sunrise." Others shook their heads in disbelief. A few, however, whispered quietly, their eyes sharp. "Why her? What does he know that we don't?" The girl felt every stare burning into her skin. Her steps were weak, her body trembling. She had been inside a cage for so long that the open air felt unreal. Each sound startled her. Each shadow made her shrink closer to him. She whispered under her breath, "Why? Why did you take me?" Her voice was broken, almost afraid to speak. The human looked down at her, his face calm, though inside he felt the weight of what he had just done. "Because no one should be left like that," he said simply. He did not know her story, did not know her name. Yet something deep inside had told him he could not walk away. They stopped at a food stall. The human placed coins on the counter and bought bread. He tore a piece and offered it to her. For a moment she just stared, unsure if it was truly for her. Slowly she took it with shaking hands. The first bite made her eyes widen, tears gathering as if she had forgotten what food could taste like. Watching her eat, the man felt a strange pull in his chest. He had given food to many strangers before, but this was different. This was not just hunger. It was the hunger of someone who had been treated as less than alive. The crowd around them kept watching. Some mocked, some pitied, and some followed silently. A pair of tall figures in dark robes lingered in the shadows. Their gazes locked on the girl. One whispered to the other, "She shouldn't have left that cage." The other nodded. "The human doesn't know what he's carrying." As they walked away, the girl tugged lightly on his sleeve. "They will come," she whispered, her voice trembling. "They don't let anyone leave the auction with something they claim." The man slowed, his eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" But she shook her head, her fear silencing her. They turned into a narrow alley to avoid the stairs. The noise of the market faded behind them. The girl clutched her bread close as if it were treasure. She looked up at him again, silver eyes wide, with confusion. "Why are you kind to me?" she asked. "Everyone else, and they only laugh, they only hurt." The human sighed. He could not explain the answer even to himself. "Because it was the right thing," he said, his voice steady, but his thoughts restless. He knew kindness had a price. He knew compassion always demanded something in return. But what price would this one ask? They reached a small inn at the edge of the market. The human paid for a room. The innkeeper raised his brow at the sight of the alien girl, muttering something about foolish human travelers, but he said nothing more. Coins made his tongue stay quiet. Inside the room, the girl sat on the edge of the bed, her posture stiff as if she expected chains to fall on her again. She would not remove her eyes from the door. Her voice cracked as she said, "They will not forgive this, you. You should have left me there." The man sat across from her, meeting her gaze. "Do you want me to take you back?" he asked. She froze, then shook her head violently. "No," she whispered. "Not back, never back." Her small hands clenched the fabric of her clothes until her knuckles turned pale. He nodded. "Then you're safe here, at least for tonight." His words were calm, but deep inside he wondered if he was lying. Outside the window, footsteps echoed in the street. The robed figures from before moved like shadows, their eyes searching. One of them murmured, "We'll wait. He cannot protect her for long." The girl's silver eyes flickered, faint glowing patterns appearing on her skin as fear surged in her chest. The man saw it for the first time, her body carrying light like fire under her skin. It was faint, but enough to show that she was not ordinary, not useless, not what the traders had claimed, and in that moment, he realized the truth. Compassion had a cost, and he had just bought more than a girl. He had bought a secret, one powerful enough that others would kill to keep it hidden. The night outside grew darker, the market grew silent, the hunters were waiting, and the human understood. The price of compassion had only just begun to be paid. The next morning, the market outside was already awake. Voices of traders rose through the dusty air, carts rattled across the stones, and the smell of roasted meat mixed with smoke. But inside the small inn room, the girl sat quietly, hugging, her knees on the bed. She had not slept much. Her silver eyes kept opening at every sound, every creak of wood. The human watched her from the corner, He had left his boots by the door, ready to move if needed. The memory of the glowing patterns on her skin the night before stayed in his mind. He had seen many things in his travels, but nothing like that. He knew it was a secret worth hiding, and a secret that could get both of them killed. The girl finally whispered, "They are watching. I feel it." Her voice shook as if the shadows themselves pressed against the window. The man stood, pulling the curtains tighter. "Then we stay careful," he said. His tone was steady, but inside he felt the weight of her words. He guided her out into the streets after sunrise, hoping the crowd would hide them. The girl walked close, holding his sleeve as if letting go meant being swallowed by the world. She looked at the stalls with wide eyes, not in wonder but in fear. Every sharp voice made her flinch, every sudden laugh made her tremble. "Breathe," the man told her. "You're not in the cage anymore." But she shook her head. The cage was safer. In the cage, I was invisible. Out here, they all see me. The human's eyes scanned the crowd. He saw them. 2 figures in robes, the same ones from last night. They did not follow too close, but their presence was clear. He guided her into a side street, then another, trying to lose them. Yet the fear in her eyes did not fade. They stopped at a fountain where travelers filled their water skins. The man knelt and washed his face, pretending calm. The girl crouched beside him, staring at her reflection in the water, her. Glowing lines faintly shimmered even in daylight. She splashed the water quickly, trying to hide them. "It never stops," she whispered. "That is why they want me. I cannot turn it off." The man leaned closer, lowering his voice. "What happens if they catch you?" She froze, her lips pressed tight. Then she shook her head. "You don't want to know. Please don't ask." He sighed, standing again. He didn't push her. He only knew one thing. Leaving her behind was no longer possible. As they moved farther, from the market the streets grew emptier, old stone buildings casting long shadows. The air carried silence now, broken only by their footsteps. The girl clutched her piece of bread from yesterday, nibbling slowly. It was almost gone, but she ate as if each crumb mattered. "Do you have a name?" he asked gently. She looked down, her silver eyes dim. "They took it from me. They called me Lot 9. That is all." The man's jaw tightened. He hated the sound of it. "Lot 9 is not a name," he said firmly. "Then what should I be?" she asked softly. Her voice was so small that it almost broke him. He paused, then said, "For now, we'll call you Lyra." The name slipped from his lips without thought, but it felt right. The girl repeated it under her breath. "Lyra." A small spark of warmth lit in her eyes, as if a tiny piece of her lost self had returned. But the warmth did not last. The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, steady and closing in. The man turned sharply, catching sight of the robed figures. Again their pace was slow, deliberate. They were not hiding anymore. "We need to move," and he said, gripping her hand. They ran through the narrow alleys, weaving between broken stalls and scattered crates. The girl stumbled, unused to running free, but he pulled her forward, refusing to let go. The streets opened into a wide plaza, deserted except for a few broken statues. The man stopped, scanning for an escape, but the robed hunters were already there. Stepping into the open, blocking the way, the girl pressed against his side, her glowing marks flickering in panic. One of the figures spoke, his voice deep and cold. "The girl does not belong to you, human. Hand her back, and you may live." The man tightened his grip on her. His eyes burned with defiance. "She belongs to no one." The hunters moved closer, their hands hidden inside their robes. The girl whispered in terror, "They won't stop. They never stop." Her whole body shook, the light under her skin pulsing brighter. The man knew then, this was not just fear. Something inside her was trying to awaken. Something that could change everything. The plaza grew silent, the shadows deepened, and the human realized that his act of compassion had pulled him into a storm far bigger than he could imagine. The hunters took another step forward. Their eyes gleamed, their voices hissed. "You cannot protect her." But he stood his ground, his heart steady, his voice sharp. "Watch me." And the girl, trembling yet holding his sleeve tighter than ever, felt for the first time that maybe she was not alone in this world of fear. The plaza was empty, except for broken statues and long shadows. The hunters stood like dark pillars, their robes moving with the wind. The human kept himself between them and the girl, his body tense, his eyes sharp. The girl, Lyra, now clung to his sleeve. Her silver eyes glowed faintly, her markings pulsing as if alive. She whispered, "They know what I am." Her voice trembled, and fear pressed into her chest like iron chains. The hunters moved closer. "Hand her over, human," one hissed. "She was never meant to leave, she belongs to us." But the man's jaw tightened. He stepped back slowly, guiding Lyra toward an alley. "She belongs to no one," he said. His voice was calm, but inside his pulse raced. The hunters stepped forward again, but the crowd of merchants began to pour into the plaza, shouting, dragging carts, selling wares. The human seized the chance. He pulled Lyra into the crowd, weaving through the noise until the hunters vanished behind waves of people. By the time they reached the edge of the city, Lyra's legs trembled so badly that she could barely walk. He guided her into an abandoned storehouse, broken beams above and dust across the floor. She collapsed onto the ground, her hands shaking. He crouched in front of her, his voice steady. "What are they? Why are they following you?" Lyra shook her head, hugging her knees tight. "You should leave me," she whispered. "You will die if you stay." The man's eyes softened. "Tell me the truth, Lyra. If I am to protect you, I need to know." Silence filled the storehouse, broken only by the faint dripping of water. Then slowly, Lyra lifted her sleeve. The glowing lines on her arm brightened, curling like fire under her skin. They moved with her heartbeat pulsing gently. "When I was a child," she whispered, "they found me glowing in the dark. They said I was chosen, not like the others. They took me from my mother, locked me away, tested me. They said I carry something inside. Power that must be controlled." Her voice broke, her body trembling as she spoke. The man listened quietly, his eyes never leaving hers. "They trained me to obey," she continued. "They beat me when I resisted. They said I was dangerous. They told me I was property. I was never given a name, only a number." Her tears fell, but she wiped them quickly, afraid of looking weak. The human's chest tightened. He understood now. She was not weak. She was hunted because she was rare, because she carried something powerful. Her uselessness was a lie to hide her value. "And the hunters?" he asked. His voice was careful, almost gentle. "They are keepers," she said softly. "They guard creatures like me. They make sure we never escape. If they catch me, they will take me back, and this time, I will not come out again." The human leaned back, running a hand across his face. He knew now the depth of the danger. This was no simple rescue. This was war with something larger than he had ever faced. Lyra looked at him with wet eyes. "You should have left me in the cage. You should leave me now." But he shook his head, his voice steady. "I don't regret it. I will not leave you. Not now." Her lips parted, her breath shaky. No one had ever said those words to her before. For the first time in her life, she felt a thread of safety, fragile but real. Outside, footsteps echoed again. The hunters had not given up. Their voices murmured in the distance, searching. The man rose. "We can't stay here, they will track us." He looked down at her, his eyes firm. "If you trust me, we move now." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Her glowing lines dimmed. As she calmed, she stood, leaning on him for balance. They slipped through the back of the storehouse, moving quietly along narrow alleys. The city stretched ahead, a maze of towers and smoke. Each shadow seemed alive, each corner hiding eyes. As they walked, Lyra whispered, "When they first locked me away, I used to dream of someone coming for me, someone who would break the chains." She looked up at him, her silver eyes trembling. "I stopped dreaming years ago." The man's step slowed. His heart tightened at her words. He did not answer, but his hand tightened protectively on her shoulder. The sun dipped lower, the sky bleeding into orange. The hunters' silhouettes appeared again on distant rooftops, patient and relentless. Lyra's past had been revealed, but the danger had only grown. The human now carried not just a girl, but the weight of a secret powerful enough to shake the city, and in the deepening shadows he knew one thing with certainty. If he failed, she would vanish back into the darkness forever. The city never truly slept, but as night returned, its noise turned into whispers. Lamps flickered weakly along the narrow streets, their light broken by patches of shadow. The human kept his pace steady, guiding Lyra close by his side. Every turn, every sound of footsteps behind them tightened the knot in his chest. Lyra's silver eyes darted in every direction. Her markings faintly glowed beneath her skin, betraying her fear. "They are still here," she whispered. "I can feel them." He didn't answer, but he knew she was right. The hunters were not chasing blindly. They were patient, steady, always a few steps behind, like wolves circling prey. They reached the edge of the market square, now half empty. Only a few merchants lingered, packing their goods into carts. The man led her through the crowd, blending with the last of the travelers. But when he glanced over his shoulder, he saw them again. Two robed figures, their faces hidden, their steps slow but certain. Lyra's hand clutched his sleeve, her voice low. "They won't stop, they'll follow until I'm gone." Her words carried both fear and certainty. The human's jaw tightened. He pulled her toward a side alley, weaving through crates and broken stalls. The hunters followed, their footsteps echoing off stone. He quickened his pace, leading Lyra through the maze of alleys. But each time they turned, the shadows seemed to shift closer. Finally, they stopped. Inside an old courtyard, broken walls around them, no way out except the path they had entered. The girl froze, her chest heaving. Her markings began to glow brighter as fear rushed through her. The hunters appeared at the mouth of the alley, their voices low, steady. "Human," one called. "You cannot keep her. She belongs to us. Hand her over, and we will spare your life." The man stepped forward, placing himself between them. And the girl, his voice was calm but firm. "She belongs to no one. She chooses her own life." The hunters laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the courtyard. One raised a hand and from his sleeve spilled a weapon, long, curved, glowing faintly with strange energy. The other whispered, "Do not resist. You are outnumbered." The girl's eyes widened, her glowing patterns pulsing faster. "Don't fight them. They'll kill you," she cried. Her voice broke with fear, but the human only glanced back at her, his voice steady. "I've faced worse. Stay behind me." The hunters stepped closer, their movements slow, deliberate. They knew they held the advantage. The man grabbed a piece of broken wood from the ground, his grip tight. It was no match for their weapons, but he had no choice. The first hunter struck, the blade cutting the air. The man dodged, the weapon slamming into stone, sparks flying. He swung the wood, hitting the hunter across the arm. It wasn't enough to break, but it forced him back. The second hunter moved quickly, rushing at Lyra. She screamed, her markings bursting with light. The human threw himself in front of her, taking the blow across his shoulder. Pain shot through him, but he didn't fall. He pushed forward, shoving the hunter away. Lyra's glowing lines spread brighter. Her whole body shimmered with silver light. The hunters froze for a moment, watching with sharp eyes. One hissed, "She's awakening." The other snarled, "Stop her before it's too late." The human held her close, his voice urgent. "Lyra, control it. Don't let them use your fear." But she was trembling too much. The light surged, spilling across the walls of the courtyard. The hunters shielded their eyes. But they did not retreat. Instead, they grew more eager, their voices filled with hunger. "Yes, she is the one. We cannot lose her again." The man's breath came hard, his shoulder bleeding. He knew he could not fight forever. Yet leaving her behind was not an option. He tightened his grip on the broken wood, his eyes burning with defiance. Lyra looked at him through her tears, her voice shaking. "Why do you fight for me? You don't even know me." His reply was sharp, quick, as if no thought was needed. "Because you deserve to live." Her heart broke at his words. For the first time in her life, someone had said she was worth saving. The glow inside her shifted, not just from fear, but from something deeper. The hunters advanced again, ready to strike. Their weapons gleamed in the night, but the human stood firm, his body weak, his wounds deep, yet his eyes never wavered. "If you want her," he growled, "you go through." The courtyard filled with silence, broken only by the sound of Lyra's glowing breath. And in that silence, the hunters realized the human was not going to break. The battle was only beginning, but in that moment, something greater had awakened. The courtyard smelled of smoke and blood. The human's shoulder burned with pain, but he refused to let go of the broken wood in his hand. Across from him, the hunters circled slowly, their glowing blades ready. Their voices were cold, steady. "Step aside, human. She is not yours to keep. Her power is not for you." Lyra clung to his sleeve, her silver eyes wide, her markings glowing brighter with every heartbeat. She whispered in fear, "They'll kill you, please. Leave me, I'll go back. You don't have to die for me." The man turned his head, his breath heavy, his face pale from blood loss. But his voice firm. "No, Lyra, I will not leave you, not now, not ever." Her tears fell, sparkling against her glowing skin. She had never heard those words before, never felt someone's choice so heavy yet so gentle. But the hunters didn't wait for feelings. They moved together, fast and deadly. The man raised the wood, blocking one strike. The force rattled his arms, his wound throbbed, but he pushed forward, swinging back. His strike barely slowed the hunter, but it forced a step of distance. The second hunter lunged for Lyra, but the human grabbed his robe, dragging him down, taking the blade across his side in the process. Pain shot through him, white-hot and sharp. He fell to one knee, blood staining his clothes. Lyra screamed, the light under her skin exploding. Her whole body glowed like burning silver. The courtyard was filled with shimmering patterns, alive and shifting. The hunters stepped back, shielding their faces from the brightness. "She's waking," one hissed. "Stop her before she destroys us all." But the human still held his ground. His breath was ragged, his vision blurry, yet his hand refused to let go of the weapon. He looked at Lyra, his voice breaking but strong. "Listen to me. This light, it's yours. Don't be afraid of it. Don't let them twist it." Lyra trembled, her tears falling faster. "But I can't control it. I'll hurt you too." He shook his head, blood dripping from his lips. "Then hurt me, if that's what it takes. But never go back to them." Her heart broke at his words. The hunters advanced again, sensing the human's body failing. One raised his blade high, ready to strike the final blow, and then Lyra screamed, not in fear, but in defiance, her glowing lines spread across her whole body, bursting into the air like lightning. The courtyard shook, stones cracking under the force. The hunters staggered back, their robes burning at the edges. Their weapons hummed as the light clashed with their energy. The human shielded his eyes, but through the brightness, he saw her, standing tall, not weak, not broken, alive and powerful. For the first time, she was not shrinking or hiding. She was shining. The hunters roared. Pressing forward again, one of them shouted, "She will kill herself if she keeps this up." The other hissed, "Then let her burn, as long as she does not escape." The man forced himself to stand, his legs shaking. His voice thundered despite his broken body. "No, she will not burn. She will live." He charged, his broken weapon raised, slamming it into the nearest hunter's chest. The wood shattered, but the strike forced the hunter back against the wall. The second hunter turned on him, blade flashing. The man braced himself, knowing the strike would end him. But before it fell, Lyra's light surged forward, wrapping around the hunter like chains. The energy lifted him off his feet and hurled him across the courtyard. She fell to her knees, gasping, the glow flickering weakly. Her strength was fading fast. The man stumbled to her side, catching her before she collapsed completely. His blood dripped onto her glowing skin. "You did it," he whispered, his voice shaking. "You're free, Lyra." But her silver eyes filled with fear. "No, they will come again. They will never stop. He brushed her hair back with a trembling hand, his eyes heavy but steady. Then let them come. We'll face them together. She looked at him, tears sliding down her cheeks. For the first time, she saw not just a rescuer, but someone willing to die to give her a life. Someone who had already given so much. His wounds were deep, his breath shallow, yet his spirit stood unbroken. Her voice cracked. Why? Why would you sacrifice everything for me? He leaned closer, whispering through his pain. Because you deserve more than chains. Because no one else believed in you. But I do. Her markings glowed faintly, softer now, almost like a heartbeat, in rhythm with his. And in that fragile moment, a bond formed stronger than any chain they had broken. The hunters groaned from the rubble, not dead, only stunned. Their shadows stretched long across the broken walls. The fight was not over, but the choice had been made. The human had sacrificed his safety, his blood, even his life's path. But in return, he had given Lyra something far greater. Hope, and, with that hope burning inside her, Lyra knew she could no longer hide. She had to stand, not just for herself, but for the man who had chosen her against the whole world. The night grew darker, but their light had only just begun to shine. The courtyard lay in ruins, broken stones scattered, smoke curling from shattered lamps. The two hunters groaned where they had fallen, their robes torn, their weapons dim. The human knelt on one knee, blood soaking his clothes, his breath sharp and shallow, yet his eyes stayed fixed on Lyra. She crouched beside him, trembling, her silver eyes wide with fear and light. Her glowing markings flickered weakly, like fading embers after a storm. You're hurt, she whispered, her voice shaking. You'll die because of me. He forced a faint smile through his pain. Not because of you, Lyra, because I chose to stand. Her tears fell, glowing faintly as they touched her skin. She had never seen someone stand. For her, never seen anyone bleed willingly so she could live. All her life she had been told she was nothing, just a number, just a tool. But this human had broken that lie with his sacrifice. The hunters stirred, their voices bitter and sharp. This isn't over, human, one spat. We will come again. She cannot escape what she is. The man's hand tightened weakly around a shard of wood, but Lyra placed her glowing fingers over his. Her eyes turned to the hunters, and for the first time she spoke without trembling. Her voice rang clear. I am not your prisoner anymore. I am not Lot 9. I am Lyra. Her markings blazed brighter, silver light spilling across the courtyard. The hunters shielded their faces, their shadows stretching thin. Then with a rush of air, they turned and vanished into the night, their words trailing like smoke. We will return and she will be ours again. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of the human's heavy breathing. Lyra turned back to him, her tears endless. Why don't you leave me? Why don't you run? You could still save yourself. He shook his head, his voice soft but unshaken. Because you are worth saving. Those words echoed in her chest. They broke the last chain around her heart. Slowly, she leaned against him, holding him tightly, afraid to let go. Then I'll save you too, she whispered. Through the night, they found shelter in a ruined house at the edge of the city. Lyra tended his wounds as best as she could, tearing cloth into bandages. Her glowing fingers pressed gently against his skin, and to her shock, the wounds began to close. Her gift, once a curse, now carried healing instead of chains. The man winced, but smiled faintly. Looks like your power isn't just destruction. Lyra looked at her hands, tears running again. Maybe it was never meant to be, she whispered. Maybe they only told me that to keep me afraid. Dawn broke slowly, painting the cracked windows with gold. The city outside stirred again. But for them, the world felt different. The hunters would return. Dangers would still follow. But something inside both of them had changed. The human sat up, his face pale but stronger than before. He looked at her with tired but steady eyes. From now on, you don't walk alone. Whatever comes, we face it together. Her silver eyes shone with warmth, fragile but real. "Together," she whispered back. Her voice carried both fear and hope. They left the ruined house as the sun climbed higher. The streets were busy again, full of traders, buyers, and laughter. No one noticed them slip through. Just another pair of travelers, but to Lyra, every step felt new. The world that had once been only cages and chains now stretched open, wide and alive. As they walked, she stayed close, her hand clinging to his sleeve, but not from fear anymore. This time she held on because she wanted to, because he had given her something no cage could take: choice. At the city's gate, the human paused, looking back once. His eyes narrowed as if he could still feel the hunters watching. But then he turned forward. His hand rested gently on Lyra's shoulder, guiding her toward the road. The path ahead was long, filled with unknown dangers, but neither of them turned back. Lyra glanced up at him, her voice soft. "When I was in the cage, I thought my life was already over. I thought I'd never see the sky. But now," she smiled through her tears, "now I feel alive." The man looked down at her, his tired face breaking into a faint smile. "That's all I wanted," he said simply. Together, they walked into the rising sun, a human who had lost much, and an alien girl who had been unwanted and forgotten. Yet now, side by side, they carried something greater than power, greater than fear. They carried hope. And for the first time in her life, Lyra believed she had a future. Not as property, not as a number, but as herself, chosen, free, and never alone again.